Okay, welcome to Minivan Theology. Here we are, bathed in the green glow of Whole Foods. Oh, I think you can see it in the reflection of the window or something there. I'm not sure what that is. Oh, that's the actual sign. That's what that is. Anyway, one housekeeping note. Some of you have told me that the comments seem to be turned off on the YouTube channel, and I thought that I had that set, but I guess I didn't. So I think I fixed it, but please let me know if I haven't fixed it. And then also, well, my high school science teacher, hey, Mr. McQueen, let me know that there was no easy to find email on my YouTube page. So thank you for that, and I've added it on. So, okay, a couple housekeeping things. Today, refrigerator magnet number 5. That's exciting, huh? We're halfway there for the 10-part series. And today I chose Proverbs 3:5, and I'm going to read it to you here from my ESV, as always. And of course, for that, I need the glasses, featuring the glasses. And it says, if you don't know it, trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. You may have grown up hearing it, and lean not on your own understanding. I don't know if that's King James or NIV, but anyway, lean not. Do not lean on your own understanding. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. Okay, so if you've been following along in the series, you know that we've got this whole Grand Canyon thing going through to help us think about this. And in this case, the postcard that you get from the Grand Canyon is a really good postcard. I will say this verse in and of itself actually says a lot. It communicates a lot of the gospel, and it says a lot about us. It says, trust in God, you're not God, and don't trust in your own understanding. I mean, that right there, that's a whole message that we could unpack. So it's a good postcard. If you got that postcard from the Grand Canyon, I'd say, boy, put that up on the fridge. That's okay, or frame it. You know, that's going to tell you a lot about the Grand Canyon, that particular postcard. But as always, there's really, as good as that verse is, there's so much more that we get to learn about who God is and what he desires for us from expanding out a little bit and learning a little bit more of the context. So Proverbs 3 verse 5 is obviously in the book of Proverbs. Again, just like Psalms, which we just did, it's right here smack in the middle of the Bible. So you can, and I think last time I said you'll hit Psalms. I mean, chances are you might also hit Proverbs. They're right here in the middle of the Bible. And Proverbs is what's called wisdom literature. And the reason that matters is because it is a set of little instructions, just sort of verse by verse instructions that communicate aspects of wisdom. Now, most of Proverbs was written by King Solomon. King Solomon was David's son, and King Solomon was the one, you may know this story, but you may not, who God said, I'll give you whatever you want, ask for what you want. And Solomon, you know, I would have been like, as you know, if you've been watching this series, I would have been like, I'd like to fly. I would like the power to fly. That's not what Solomon chose. I might also go for like dinner fairies, right? I'm always talking about dinner fairies, like stop having to make dinner every night. My dinner is sitting in a Tupperware container right here. Nope, Solomon didn't need dinner fairies. He had like servants. Anyway, whatever. Solomon chose wisdom. Much better choice. I'm sure I would have gotten there eventually. So he asked God for wisdom, and God gave him wisdom. And God also blessed Solomon, and Solomon was the one who built the temple, the first temple, and really the most splendid version of the temple that was built on earth. And Solomon just had this great reign. It was probably considered the most peaceful time of the nation of Israel's that time period. So Proverbs is a book that he put together, taking all of that wisdom that God gave him and giving it to the people of Israel and saying, here's just a set of, you know, it's a little bit of everything. It's some instructions, it's some ideas, it's some sort of just like quotations that would be helpful. And so it's a whole book of them. And so chapter 3 is where we find ourselves, which is at the very beginning of Proverbs. Oh, I wanted to say, as always, how do we know that Solomon wrote Proverbs? Most of the Proverbs, it says so. So again, this is not like conjecture, and it's not like just tradition. It's actually just what the Bible says. Proverbs chapter 1, verse 1 says, the Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel. And what might this book be about, you ask? Verse 2 says, to know wisdom and instruction and to understand words of insight. I mean, sometimes it's just as simple as going to the first chapter and the first verse of the book of the Bible that you're reading, and it will tell you what you can expect going forward. Okay, so now let's peel back a layer. Let's go get out of the car and go up to the rim of the Grand Canyon and peer down and see what we have to see. So chapter 3 is 35 verses long. most of your Bibles are going to have the subdivisions that I have, which it divides chapter 3 into 2 sections. The first section and the section, which goes through verse 12, and then the second one goes from 13 to 35. We're going to focus today on verses 1 through 12, and that's okay to do. When you're trying to get context, the translators have already subdivided chapters for you, and it's okay to look for context within just that subdivision for sort of that peering over the rim view. And so chapter 3, verses 1 through 12 is going to have 6, I'm going to call them couplets. I think that's Shakespearean. I'm not sure it's biblical terminology, but there's 6 verses that are paired up. So it's 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, so forth and so on. And they go together. And so I'm just going to read. I'm actually going to read the first 3. So we're not going to even look at the whole first half of chapter 3. We're going to just look at the first 3 couplets, which is the first 6 verses. So let me read them to you. Proverbs 3, verses 1 through 6. But also what I want to say is listen for things that repeat. That's the important thing. When you're trying to figure out what's going on in a passage, it's helpful to just ask the question, does anything repeat? Sometimes nothing will repeat, and you'll be like, okay, the answer is nothing. But this time there are some things that repeat. So listen up. My son, or my child, do not forget my teaching, but let your heart keep my commandments. For length of days and years of life and peace they will add to you. Let not steadfast love and faithfulness forsake you. Bind them around your neck, write them on the tablet of your heart, so you will find favor and good success in the sight of God and man. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. This says will make straight your paths, but I know it as he will make your path straight. The ESV, sometimes it's clunky. Okay, what did we hear that repeated in there? You probably are saying, ooh, ooh, Sunday School Sally, raising your hand back there. Ooh, ooh, what is it? Yes, what is it? It's the word heart. Yes, that's right. In each one of these couplets, we hear the word heart. Now, an interesting thing I will tell you is that also in verse 1, it says, my son or my child. And at the end of this section, verse 11, it also says, my son or my child. But because I'm just going to look at the first 3 of these, but that's another way that you can know that this is an enclosed section. Okay, so the word heart, it happens in each one of the couplets. In verses 1 and 2, it talks about let your heart keep my commandments. In verses 3 and 4, it says to tie the steadfast love and the faithfulness on the tablets of, or the table of your heart. And then in our verse that we're looking at, it says trust in the Lord with all your heart. So when something repeats 3 times like that, and you see the word in all 3 places, you should pay attention. Okay, so what God is saying through Solomon in these Proverbs is something to do with our heart. Well, are there any other clues in these 3 couplets, these 6 verses, that help us think about what that might be? Well, there's all these instructions, right, that talk about what might be in the heart. So the commandments are in the heart. The steadfast love and the faithfulness are in the heart. There's trust in the heart. And I'm sitting here thinking, yeah, I don't know about that. That's when I think of the heart apart from God, I don't think of steadfast love, and I don't think of faithfulness, and I certainly don't think about keeping the commandments, right? When I think about the heart in its natural state, I think about selfishness and crankiness and greediness, all of the things that are sort of the natural condition of our broken hearts. And so I think, well, God's telling Solomon that this is something that we're supposed to be doing from our hearts. How is that possible apart from God? And so there's another clue in here. There's another interesting word, and I don't know if anybody caught it. Well, you probably didn't catch it because the ESV translates it different. But in verse 3, it says, let the steadfast love and the faithfulness forsake you. Bind them around your neck and write them on the tablet of your heart. Okay, tablet. Does that ring any bells? The last time that we hear the word tablet in the Old Testament before Proverbs here is back in Chronicles, and it's talking about, of course, the 10 Commandments, the 2 tablets. God gave Moses the law up on Mount Sinai, and he wrote it on the 2 tablets. They were 2 stone physical tablets that he wrote the 10 Commandments on, and also that just sort of represents all of the law that God gave Moses on Mount Sinai. And this was God's way of giving the people of Israel instructions so that they could be in relationship with him. Remember, that's the story of the Bible. It's not about us. It's about God and his desire to bring us back into relationship with him, the relationship that we lost in the garden when we broke that relationship. And so God gives Moses these tablets, and no sooner, I mean, they're not even like, they're barely finished, are they writing the tablets, and the people start breaking the law. Moses is up on the mountain and they're making the golden calf idol. And you know, if you grew up in church land, you've seen that flannelgrammed out for you. You've seen Moses and the tablets, and then probably like fire and like a little golden calf flannelgram. And you know, from the very, very beginning, the people were just incapable of keeping the law. And that is the whole Old Testament, is a story of God giving the law and the people breaking the law, and God giving them another chance and then blowing it again. And what it shows us every single time is that we are incapable of keeping the law. So here we are in Proverbs, and we're getting these instructions. We're getting, you know, keep the commandments, the steadfast love, the faithfulness. That's not something that's inside us. That's not something that we naturally can do. And so what are we to think of this? Well, we're to look at the word tablet, and we're to think about the law, and we're supposed to remember that all along this story has not actually been just about the law. Now, you know, if this was a New Testament verse, you'd be like, that's right, I know. Jesus comes along and he, like, you know, gives us this new heart. But it's not just a New Testament story. It's an Old Testament story too. And so it's as early as the first king of Israel. So Solomon is David's son, but David replaced King Saul. King Saul was the failed first king. And as early as King Saul, he was given a task and he didn't complete it well, and he tried to, you know, appease God by working and doing something and making a sacrifice. And the prophet at the time, Samuel, said to him, I'm just reading here from 1 Samuel 15, the Lord has the Lord a great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices, i.e. the law, or would he rather obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice. I mean, this is really early. This is before Solomon was even born. Already God is saying it's not about the law, it's not about the sacrifice. The sacrifice and the law, they're sort of the same thing. It refers to the same thing, because so much of the law was about sacrifice. It was never about that. It was about God trying to show the people that they needed to be in relationship with them, and they need God to make that possible. And he gave them the law to show them how unable they were to do that. And already, just by that first king, God's already saying, what I want you to do is obey. I don't care about how you do the sacrifice. And then we get up to David, Solomon's father, still so early in the Old Testament. And David writes in Psalm 51, "For you will not delight in sacrifice, or I would give it. You will not be pleased with burnt offering. The sacrifices of God are a broken spirit and a contrite heart." So already we see, even before this proverb is written, that what God's after is our heart. And that is the story of the Bible. That is the story of the whole thing. In the garden, our hearts, we broke our hearts. We did it to ourselves, and God is making a way to restore our hearts. Now, there's another passage that comes along a bit after Proverbs. It's from Ezekiel 36, and it talks about God coming down and seeing our hearts of stone. It literally says, "I will take your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh." And that's what God does. He takes our broken, selfish, miserable stone hearts, and he gives us, through the work of Jesus, a heart of flesh. But it's not just a New Testament thing. It was his plan all along. The whole Bible has been about that. So when we back up and we look at our verse now, sort of going down into the Grand Canyon at this, and the big, you know, the big story, how does this fit into the big story? That's why this verse is such a great verse, and it sort of is, you could just hang it on your fridge and that's going to be okay, because this is the whole point of the gospel. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Why? Because you're so great at it and you're so good at trusting God all on your own? No, because he takes your broken, stone cold heart and he gives you a new heart of flesh, and he writes on it, your heart becomes the tablet. He writes on it life. He writes on it the life that Jesus gives us. And that's how we're able to trust in the Lord and not lean on our own understanding, which is a good thing, right? Because who knows what we would do. But we can lean on he gives us his life, his way. And that's why he makes our paths straight in the next verse. In all your ways, acknowledge him, God, and he will make your paths straight. You don't know if you should go to this school or that school. Doesn't matter. God's going to make your path straight. You don't know if you should take that job or this job. Doesn't matter. God's going to make your path straight. You don't know if you should move, if you should stay, should buy, should sell. whatever. It can be anything, chicken or tacos, I don't know. Doesn't matter. Really, in all the decisions, very, very small to the huge life-changing ones, God, if you are following him and obeying him, he will make your path straight. It may not be the path that you thought. It may not even feel straight to you, but God is making the path straight. And it's because he gives us his heart. He gives us the heart of Jesus. And he takes our hearts that are broken and he redeems them, he fixes them, he restores them in part now and in full someday. So from the very beginning of this story, it is always a story about God. It's never a story about us as the main character. God wanting our hearts, not necessarily wanting just our obedience, but when he gives us his heart, we in turn want to obey him. We want to trust him, and we want to have this steadfast love and this faithfulness never forsake us. And we're capable of that because it's his heart that he gives us. And that is the good news of this verse. Woo! Okay, so that's Proverbs 3:5. Now, I have one little last thing to tell you, and that is I've been waiting for a long time to say this, but I don't know how to do this. This broadcast is brought to you by a live studio audience. Boys! Look, oh, they're not, look at Nitro Moosey. Look who is a good theology minivan dog. Yeah, were you a good minivan theology dog? Yeah, all right, so that's my live audience. I was so afraid they were gonna bark in the middle of it, but they didn't. All right, thanks, share, subscribe, all the things. And look, I beat 17 minutes. Bye.